from our hell, we've learned some things, right? And that's what you should do. Hey everyone, my name is Branlyn Dirmia, and this is my Mile High Rant. So, I love talking travel, and a lot of times there are a lot of intrusive thoughts that happen over here in the world of travel, and it's like, they're not always necessarily tips and tricks and gems to get you through your travel or the best spots or what's viral, but literally like how we just travel and move around the world. And so I wanted to create a space where I could just have that type of conversation and discussion. So, if you're interested in moving beyond just a little bit further into the travel world and just having like these open conversations of things we don't really get a chance to unpack, then you're in the right place because that's what my Mile High Rant is about. So, we're going to be talking about different topics throughout the year. I'm super excited to start this with you all, and I can't wait to see where it goes and grows. Yeah. So, my Mile High Rant today is a very, I would say, a sensitive topic. By the time you see this, it will be airing on 9/11. For U.S. Americans, 9/11 is a really big deal to a lot of us. A lot of things changed on that day. How we saw travel, how travel happened to us, people we lost on that day was very, very large body count. For me, I think when I think about it, I guess it was a really traumatizing experience. I was in high school. So, just to give you a little background, 9/11 September, which is month 9, and the 11th day of September, in 2001, the U.S. went under attack. The World Trade Center was hit, both towers, two towers. There were like 5 buildings, I think. And in those 5 buildings, 2 of them were very, very tall towers. And they appear in old movies like Home Alone and stuff like that. So, things that warm my heart when I see them, like, because they were a vision for New York. Like, that's how you knew you landed over here in the States, right? When you landed in New York. But the Twin Towers were hit by 2 commercial airliners. There were 4 planes involved. One crashed in a field outside of Pennsylvania or in Pennsylvania, and then another one crashed into the Pentagon. For me, I was sitting in world history class when the first plane hit. And I remember looking at my classmate from across the way. We didn't know anything. We were paying attention in class. And it just sounded like a boom. I know that sounds crazy. Probably was a air conditioned HVAC system, maybe. But by the time we left that class, on coming on TVs across our school was the planes being slammed into buildings, and they were running the footage on repeat. I went to Spanish class next, and we didn't learn any Spanish that day. We weren't in class. Like, we were in class, but class was not taking place. Our Spanish teacher was from New York. Her fiance was in New York at the time. She had family in New York, and so by the time the first plane hit, I don't remember the exact time frame, but not too long after that, a second plane hit the second tower. First half of the day at school was the first class seemed normal until we made it to second block, and then by the day was just easily unraveling. For me, it got a little crazy. I remember school being canceled. I remember them sending us home early. Where I'm from is about 45 minutes from Fort Bragg. So something like that happening on the East Coast, especially, I think the way we felt about it in our little small town in North Carolina was that we were getting ready to go to war. And so, what did this look like for us? So, they canceled all the activities and practices and games and all of these things, and they sent us home. They sent us home early that day. They arranged early release, and then I think school was canceled like for the rest of the week. So, how did I even end up in this rabbit hole? Every year for 9/11, I kind of go down a rabbit hole of information. I don't know. I think in a way trauma soothing, if that's a thing. I look at the information, I go look at videos, I go look at pics, and it's like one of those things like we learned from it, so you don't want to forget it. And this time, it wasn't that I just was deciding to go look for 9/11 information. I've been also in a little cycle of going back to listen to old classic CDs. Sometimes I get jealous when people know all the lyrics to songs, and I'm like, I don't know these words. And I'm like, what was I doing when this album came out? So I actually went back to listen a few weeks ago to The Blueprint by Jay-Z. And it's a really solid album. Like, it's a classic, right? And so I was just in it. And for whatever reason, I don't always do this, but on Apple Music, there is a description of the album, and it gives you all of these little tidbits. And it talked about how this particular album, was released on September 11th, 2001. And even with the release on September 11th, it did so great. And I think I was just like, amazed and alarmed. Like, he released this on September. Why did I not know this random hip hop pop culture fact? Like, it was, I know somebody's probably listening to this and like, I knew that. I didn't. I wasn't. In 2001, Jay-Z wasn't on my radar. Not saying he wasn't on my radar. Like, I knew who Jay-Z was, but we were Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, like Pink, like I was into those girl groups, Destiny's Child, that type of thing. So I wasn't really in a Jay-Z bundle at the time. I've grown, trust me. So in hearing that, that's really what opened the can of worms for me. And so I saw something else about 9/11, and I don't know, I Googled, like, cause it's like, how did this happen? How did this happen? How did we have a whole tower go down? I think the body count was almost 3,000 people that passed from the towers alone. Like, it was just crazy, right? Like, how did we end up here? And so in the midst of me Googling, I actually came across the commission report. And in the commission report, I was just completely alarmed. Like, I don't even know I think I was in such a state of shock, and I've been wanting to talk about it. And so this is where we ended up with the Mile High Rant, because there's so many things I want to talk about that deal with travel or connected to travel. They're travel adjacent, but we don't talk about them in the realm of travel. We don't unpack them in the realm of travel. When I bring up, usually when I post 9/11 every year, people tell me in the comments, like, they remember a time when in the US about planes, and in the world about planes and airline travel and all those things. Pre-2001, people could just go to the airport. Like, you didn't have to have a flight. You could just show up. You could go eat at the amazing restaurants at the airport. You could just go get close and watch the plane. You could you could walk your loved ones to their gates. Post 9/11, it hasn't ever been the same. We've gone from literally taking off almost all of our clothes and items. In some cases, some TSA areas we still do. Thank God for TSA pre-check, for you to be able to leave some things on. Thank God for technology, for being able to, detect different things. But our whole entire world changed on 9/11. And I think I had this thought of like, did it have to be this way? Like, what really happened? What conversations were going on? So in the commissioner's report, there is the very first section is called "We Have Some Planes." And when I started reading the report, I was like, why in the world would they choose that as a subheading? I didn't know what to expect from the report at all. But as I started reading the report, going in down, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is where this is a line from one of the hijackers. So catch this. The first plane that crashed into the World Trade Center left out of Boston. They were getting hijacked. They were the first ones to get hijacked. They knew the plane was getting hijacked. So after 15, 20 minutes after takeoff, that is when the people made their move on the cockpit. And there is a flight attendant on the phone with the people on the ground in Boston, and she is telling them, she specifically uses the word, we are hijacked. We've been hijacked. Like, and she's explaining the situation that is going on in the sky with the plane. And she's telling them kind of like a play by play. They're flying low and all these other things. In the midst of this, they also get information from the cockpit because the man who is flying the plane at this point sends a message, I guess, trying to say it to the body of the plane, like through the PA system, but it ends up getting also transmitted to the flight control. And so in the midst of this, he's pretty much telling everybody not to do anything. We have some planes and blah, 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 blah. So the person who heard it wasn't sure if they were saying we have some planes, like we have some planes because it's an accent, like he didn't mean to say the S, or if it was really like we have some planes. So this happened on one airline carrier. It is communicated with their tower back in Boston. They're letting them know, fast forward, this plane loses communication. The person on the phone loses communication because they crashed into the first tower. In the midst of this, there is another plane that also has kind of lost communication. And I say kind of. And I think this is where this rant comes into play, because as I was reading the report, apparently it was normal for a plane to kind of like not have communication, or a person in a tower to maybe not see the plane on their screen for a period of time. Not a long time, maybe like 5-10 minutes, but a lot of things happen in 5-10 minutes. And so they weren't really sure if they had lost the plane or if the plane was just experiencing some radar connection issues back with the tower. I think my biggest issue with all of this is a plane was hijacked out of Boston. They know their plane was hijacked. They talked to the person on the plane, and the plane was hijacked. It wasn't confusion about if the plane had been taken. No, we were overtook. This is what happened. There are 4 men. This is the conversation. They knew the plane was taken. Nobody else knew. Nobody else knew that this plane was hijacked. Nobody. Per the report, nobody knew. Not allegedly, per the report. You can Google the report. Per the report, nobody else knew that this particular plane was taken. And so then this next plane, we're now getting some reports. This is happening, but now they're asking other planes, do you see this plane? We haven't seen this plane. They try to get the military involved, but the military didn't know where to go. So it's like, yeah, we're missing a plane. And then we hear something from this plane, but we don't know where they're going. New York, can you be on the lookout? Like, and all of these planes were domestic flights. So all of them were long haul flights or mid haul flights across the country. So they were all planning to land on the opposite side. So they left from the East Coast. They were going to land maybe on the West Coast. And they didn't know where their plane was. They didn't know where the plane was. And I felt like that was crazy. And the military didn't know where to go. So by the time they tapped in the military for a fighter jet, they didn't know where to even send the plane. So they scrambled the jets, and then the jets were just like flying over the ocean somewhere, waiting for a direction. And by the time they get direction, the second plane hits the next tower. The fourth plane never made it to its final destination because people were getting word on that plane, and they left late, I believe, but they were getting word on that plane that there had been hijackings, like they were calling other people, and the same situations that happened on the first plane, the second plane, third plane also happened on the fourth plane. The third plane also, I think it was a different carrier as well. So one was one carrier, another, when I say carrier, like brands of airlines, like you would go to. And so there wasn't communication between these airlines either about what was happening. So 2 planes are now hijacked. They had reports and calls that came in. The fourth plane left late. Also, now the passengers have heard from people that this is what's going on that happened to these other planes. So they actually ended up overtaking, and they ended up crashing somewhere else, somewhere in Pennsylvania. And then the Pentagon plane, they couldn't find that one either. And angered me, annoyed me. Like, how is it that we're working in such silos that we don't know nothing? We don't know anything that's going on. A plane said they were hijacked and nobody else knew. Nobody else knew that this one particular plane had been hijacked. Like, how does that even happen? Like, what? As a reader, as I was reading the report, and I did not finish reading the report because I was like, oh, this is just way too much information. Plus, I tried to be mindful of what I consume because it can also make me anxious. So I try not to, if I know, especially when I have travel coming up, things like this can send me over the edge a little bit. And I want to make sure I'm at peace when I fly as much as possible. But there were just so many things that just went awry. Now, I want to put a pause in that conversation because post 9/11, not only did things change with how we fly, how we know travel to be. Like, travel today in every country you go to is because of the events of 9/11. Right? Like how we have to go through TSA, taking off shoes, liquids in a bag, 3 ounce, all of those things. For those of you that are too young to remember 9/11 or maybe have no recollection of it at all, and the only travel you know is the one where you have to take off your belt when you walk through TSA and your shoes and all of those things, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. So not only did the changes come in how we travel, but how they used to build buildings also changed as well. Because of stairwells and things like that, people did not know how to evacuate the World Trade Center because the building was over 100 floors, so nobody ever really took the steps, so you didn't know where the steps were. People were at work, and it was banking institutions, and you know how we're in these high-rise buildings or any building, the fire alarm goes off and they're kind of like, should we leave? Should we not leave? And so there was a lot of hesitation in evacuation. So a lot of different things changed. And I learned some of this from working like a summer camp. And there was a lot of focus groups that happened after 9/11. So things that I tend to do, not only do I pay attention to exits when I go on a plane, so you should know where your exits are, front, behind you, whatever. But I also pay attention to like high-rise buildings that I'm in. I typically always find the stairwell. If I live in a high-rise building, when I move in, I always take the stairs after I move in to see where they come out at, to see how long it takes me to get down. One of the things with the stairwells in 9/11, the buildings were old, so the stairwells were much smaller. They were like custom back then was like 3 feet, which is like arm span, right? So they were 3 feet in width, and it was just not a lot of space for people to come down and firefighters to go up. And so since then, you'll notice in most new buildings, the space in between or the width of a stairwell is huge these days. And part of the reason is because there wasn't enough room to move 2 by 2 down, and it wasn't enough room for firefighters to go up. So everybody was doing single file up and single file down. So now stairwells are much larger to accompany more people going down and up, which things that they fixed. But getting back to the travel aspect of it, I think for me, there is so much trust in people we don't know, that we will never see, that we will never hear of. And it just kind of rattled me a little bit to know that one plane knew they were hijacked and only one group of people knew that information. And that information didn't get communicated to other people. It didn't go up the chain. And in the report, they talk about how that system just wasn't in place. And the system that was in place required a lot of clearance. Like, the person watching the plane needed to tell their supervisor. That supervisor needed to tell their supervisor. That supervisor needed to tell another person. That person then gets in contact with the regional person. And then the regional person gets the information out to the next person. But the communication was just not there. And of course, because people aren't trying to cause mass panic, there's a lot of pause, there's a lot of hesitation until you look up and there's 4 planes on the ground when they're not supposed to be, right? And so I think it made me just very aware that there are so many people that show up to work to ensure safety in our travel. And to connect it, like even back to our own personal lives, like when we work in silos, sometimes that is not the most beneficial thing. We need to be able to have open communication. We need to be able to have plans in place. And a lot of times people don't ever want to talk about the plans. And I know we can go down like this what if spiral. If you're a teacher and you've ever had that what if student, I know that's, it can take you crazy. But we also have to be able to make sure we have certain things in place and our minds are like on the right things. There was no plan for hijacking of commercial liners. There was no plan to organize planes, the military. There was no communication in place. They had a hijacking plan, but not for planes that would be hijacked on domestic land. They had outside plans, but they didn't have an inside look. And the lack of these systems cost a lot of lives that day. And you just pray because, we see the report, but we don't know. Like, I know from the building standpoint, I've seen the changes since 9/11 in new buildings and the standards and the codes that are up, right? We've seen those changes, or you've seen them, but maybe you didn't know. But as far as everything else dealing with like manpower and man-made disasters, like even tagging in this little moment, Hurricane Katrina, and they displaced thousands, almost millions of people from Louisiana, from New Orleans, right? They displaced all of these people, and because of the levees breaking, the hurricane itself didn't do the massive damage, but the flooding from the breaking of the levees, something that they knew about. All of these documentaries are releasing right now, but something that they've known about for years, that you knew this was going to happen and there was no plan in place. So I don't have my rant to stir up your anxiety. That's not what I'm here for. But I just want to be able to have a place to talk about the things that we don't so often get to unpack. We don't really get a chance to do that. And I wanted to make sure we had a place to do that. So things to take away from today's conversation. Yes, this can be angry for some. This could be very triggering for others and very sad. And I know that all of us are typically selfish travelers. I say that with love. I'm a selfish traveler. Most of you are selfish travelers. And when I say we're selfish travelers, meaning we are in our own bubble when we leave our homes. We've been packing for days or weeks or hours, and we are trying to get the kids together with their clothes and their snacks and their entertainment. We're trying to make sure everything is charged. We're trying to make sure we got all our chargers. And sometimes our biggest worry is, did my bag make it, and the food on the plane, is it going to be decent, and is the person beside me going to be, space sharing friendly, And I just think we just be aware. Just be aware of the systems in place and the things that are going on around you. Be aware of who you're flying with, who you're traveling with. And in that moment of your selfishness when you're traveling, say a prayer for all these people we never see that are responsible for our safety, communicating with the pilot, communicating with the crew, the man that's responsible for putting whatever that little thing is that stops the plane from rolling. Like, we see the guys out there dancing sometimes. Like, I'm just so grateful for people who have picked this up to be their job, and they're securing our safety. Because I do think when we think about travel, before I read that report, I don't think I had a thought that there wasn't a system in place. But I'm grateful that from our hell, we've learned some things, right? And that's what you should do. You should, in any situation in life, from your hell, there's always a lesson to be learned. So next time you're traveling, say a prayer for all those people that you don't see that keep us safe, their training, their peace. I pray that they, are having the best work experience they possibly can have at the best rate to be paid to do it. And I'm just grateful for them showing up for their job, for me to be able to be like, hey, I want to go to another country. What flight am I going to catch? So that's all I have to say. That's my Mile High Rant. I can't wait to share more of these with you. Again, I am Branlyn Dirmia. Follow me on Instagram and YouTube at Branlyn Dirmia, and TikTok. I'm there. I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. Be sure to share, like, share, comment, and subscribe. I would love to have you in my family and in my community. I promise my rants will be a little bit different each week. This is just the start. So, to everybody who lost someone in 9/11, my heart goes out to you. I send prayers and peace to whoever hears this, the sound of my voice. 9/11 changed my life, and I'm pretty sure it might have changed yours as well. And maybe it changed your life and you didn't even know it. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is Branlyn Dirmia with your Mile High Rant.